We got the newest member of the Detroit media with us, and guess who's going to Green Bay?
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is the Locked On Lions on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day on a Thursday, June the 20th, and a Friday, June 21st. Thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Hopefully everybody out there is cool and feeling good. It's been a hot week around Metro Detroit, but thanks for making us your first listen, checking us out on YouTube, on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Please subscribe and do that. Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for doing so and watching and listening every day. Shout out to our everydayers who are out there and those of you that participated and put in some submissions on our new Speak Pipe, where you can leave a voicemail and we will play our call of the day coming up momentarily here on Locked On Lions at speakpipe.com/Derry podcast page. It's some good submissions. We appreciate all of you. Locked On Lions today brought to you by Gametime. Looking for tickets? Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Special guest on the show today, Rachel Hopmayer, the newest member of the Detroit media. If you watch CBS Detroit News on Channel 62, you see a new sports anchor there and reporter. Rachel comes to us from Buffalo. Brand new to the market. We want to introduce her to you and have her on the show. She's a lot of fun, and we'll have her on momentarily here on the program. Also, somebody asked me the most ridiculous question today about the Lions that I could not believe as I was talking to somebody at a local restaurant. Also, what we got to get into right now, and we will get into, is the Packers have a new kicker. It's a former Lion. All of that today right here on Locked On Lions. Follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions on Twitter, and the Matt Derry Facebook fan page as well. Well, I told you the other day, when the Lions signed Jake Bates to a 2-year contract, and they beat out the likes of the Green Bay Packers within the division. Packers had some kicking issues last year with their draft pick, Anders Carlson. They signed Greg Joseph, ex of the Vikings. But the Vikings, of course, got rid of Greg Joseph because they drafted Will Reichard, and they have former Lion John Parker Romo on their team. So the Vikings used a draft pick on Will Reichard from Bama, said goodbye to Greg Joseph. He's in Green Bay now with Anders Carlson. But I told you, when the Lions signed Jake Bates and gave him 2 years, they were doing that to keep him away from Green Bay. Today, the Packers signed James Turner off waivers from the Lions. So Turner, Joseph, and Carlson will duke it out for the Green Bay kicker job. But the Packers claiming James Turner off waivers from the Lions tells me that Green Bay was very serious about bringing Jake Bates in. I think it's funny. Green Bay had issues with the kicking game last year, and the Packers had a really good year last year, and we know they're going to be hot on the Lions' tails this year. So says Locked On Packers host Peter Bukowski, who thinks the Packers will beat the Lions up, but we'll see about that. But I do find it a little bit comical that here's James Turner, who's had a really good mini camp with the Lions and gave Michael Badgley a little bit of a run for his money. But Brad Holmes, the GM, had his eyes on the Michigan Panthers and UFL All-Pro kicker Jake Bates, who we've been talking about. By the way, I was downtown the other day. I forgot that there's a Bates Avenue or a Bates Street right there by Campus Martius. So we don't need to be naming any streets after Jake Bates. He already has a street in Detroit. But Jake Bates is here. We'll battle it out with Michael Badgley. And James Turner, who kicked pretty well for the Lions during minicamp, now is going to, of all places, the Green Bay Packers. So I think that is funny. Before we talk to Rachel Hopmayer and tell you a little bit about Gametime, today I was stunned. I ran into somebody that I know at a local establishment today as I was walking into lunch, and they said they liked the show and they were checking it out, but they're a very casual fan. And they asked me today about the quarterback competition, and I went, what competition? They're like, well, who's Goff's backup again? And I said, Hendon Hooker. They're like, oh yeah, is he good? Like, could he win the job? And I said, what are you talking about? It's like, well, Jared Goff's played well, but this is it, right? And I'm like, no, they gave him $50 million a year. What? And it's like, oh, but I think I saw that, but who's the backup? It's like, we're still talking about that. And this is a casual fan. This is a friend of mine that is not really into the Lions or sports. He pays a very little attention, but I still can't believe that there are people in town, all right, that still, maybe it's a casual, that still think that somehow, some way, Hendon Hooker or somebody else could take Jared Goff's job. No, Jared Goff's going to be here to stay. There's no competition. There's going to be competition for the fourth wide receiver job. There's going to be competition for, the number 3 edge rusher and safety. There's going to be competition in the secondary. Always competition in that linebacker room because it's got good depth, but no, not a quarterback. There's not. I thought that was a little bit surprising that I got that question today about Hendon Hooker. People still talking about that. All right. I've mentioned before, we have a new little voicemail system. We have a call of the day that we're going to do from you, the listeners and viewers, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you go to speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page, you can send in your submission. Keep it clean, no personal attacks, no swearing, all those things. David Barnett sent in a couple of good ones. David's awesome. Didn't make the cut. Scott DeHaan sent one in, which was good. But the winner today is one of our listeners, and his name is Justin, and he asks a very good question on our call of the day at speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page.
Hey, Matt. Justin here. We heard a lot about Jamir Gibbs last year, all the things that Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes wanted to do with him as far as put him at wide out and in the slot. And I think we're hearing more of the same this year, and I think it's a little bit more important this year that he have some type of role like that outside from playing running back. Do you see them doing this, or is this something that we're just going to hear about again leading up to the season, but barely see him at wide out? Thanks.
All right. Thank you to listener Justin for his submission at speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page for our call of the day. Justin asks a very good question about Jamir Gibbs. Last year, if you remember, the Lions, I don't know if the Lions were talking much about it, but it was a lot of media talk, and there was some discussion about, yes, Jamir Gibbs is going to play a multifaceted role. He's not just going to be in the backfield, but expect to see him in the slot, expect to see him at wide receiver. And, he caught passes, and he was, I think, the leading receiver for Bama, as well as the leading rusher 2 years ago. And then it really, like Justin said, it really didn't come to fruition. Now, Jamir Gibbs was dynamic. He was incredible out of the backfield. Occasionally we saw him out wide, but I do believe this year we're going to see more of that. Remember last year, when healthy, the Lions had Josh Reynolds out there with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, Jamison Williams, and others. They really didn't need to utilize Jamir Gibbs as a receiver. Now, Reynolds is gone, haven't replaced him. They like Donovan Peoples-Jones. They like Antoine Green. We'll see about any of these UDFAs that they have, the kid from Illinois. But I do think we're going to see more of Jamir Gibbs out wide. Yes, I do. Because I think that last year they wanted him to be in the backfield where he was comfortable. And now, too, could we see some things where Gibbs is out wide and you've got David Montgomery and maybe even Sione Vaki, the draft pick, in the backfield. So there's a lot of different looks. The Lions feel like they have more depth at running back now, too, with Gibbs and Montgomery, Craig Reynolds, and Sione Vaki. So, yes, Justin, to answer your question, I do think we'll see more of Jamir Gibbs out wide and as a receiver this year, for sure. All right. We are going to talk to Rachel Hopmayer from CBS Detroit. We will do that coming up next right here on a Thursday edition of a Locked On Lions. Got to tell you about our friends at the Gametime app. Looking for Tiger tickets, MLB tickets? Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Want to go to any of these Tiger games coming up at Comerica Park? Check out the boys, see if they can score some runs, say a prayer before you walk into the game. You could do that by going to the Gametime app. It really is the best. And what's great about the Gametime app too is, and I was on there the other day looking for Tigers Guardians tickets, July 8th through the 11th, is the view from your seat. You know exactly where you're sitting. You click on the button and you can view right, view left, you move, you get that feel. I love that about Gametime. It is awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, as promised, folks, joining us today right here on Locked On Lions, a new face in the Detroit media. She is anchoring every single night on the local news on CBS Detroit. Rachel Hopmayer is with us, the newest member of the Detroit media. Rachel, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
So thrilled to be here. I'm honored. This is my first official Detroit appearance. So, of course, it goes to you.
Seriously?
Yeah.
No one's interviewed you? No one's wanted to talk to you?
I'm a hot commodity at some points, but it is the off season. So you got the bait.
Well, I'm not going to tell the fans yet how you and I were introduced. I got to leave that to some suspense because, as I said yesterday, the guy that introduced us is a hated man in the city. That's all we will say. But how long have you been here? What brought you to Detroit, and how excited are you to be here?
I'm thrilled to be here first and foremost. I've been here for a little over a month now, and I came here for the job. This opening at CBS Detroit, running the sports department, was something I couldn't turn down. It's really exciting. You know as well as I do now that Detroit is such an exciting sports city. There's always something going on. Even in the off season, I've been nowhere short of busy. So it's very exciting. And of course, the Lions are at the top of that right now.
Oh, no question about it. Now, you grew up in Boston. So does that mean you're bringing Patriots fandom here, or what's the story there?
I was fortunate to take in a lot of games at Gillette growing up, but I stick to my ethics as a journalist here. I cover sports anymore. Am I a fan of fun? Am I a fan of touchdown celebrations? Yes. But believe me when I say my priority will be taking in Lions games because I've got to talk about them on TV and I don't want to look stupid in this town. So, but I did have very fond memories at Gillette. I had a parade every year in my childhood. That's what I tell everyone. So love it or hate it. I grew up seeing the best of the best, and that's what made me want to do this.
So wait, so are you going to hop on a plane and be there for the Duck Boat Celtic extravaganza tomorrow, or no?
As much as I would really love to. I have a big shoot day at Detroit Golf Club on Friday, preparing for some Rocket Mortgage stuff. So my sister will be texting me photos. She just texted me some championship pictures to add. Maybe that'll rub off on the Pistons here. It would be fun. I've covered every championship except for a Super Bowl at this point. So I got to cover the NBA Finals when Milwaukee won in 2021. That overlapped to my career. So, but I would take another one if the Pistons want to go for it.
So you've jumped around a little bit to get to this point. Take us through your journey professionally.
Sure. I went to American University in DC. I loved it. I spent 6 wonderful years in DC, where I also worked for a regional sports network there. It was formerly Comcast Sportsnet, most recently NBC Sports Washington, and now fans may know it as Monumental Sports Network. I was there for a few years during and after college, covering everything in the DMV, from Jay Gruden's tenure at FedEx Field to the Capital Stanley Cup championship just a few weeks after I graduated, to the Nationals World Series win. It was a lot of fun there. And then shortly after that, in 2020, I went to Green Bay for 2 years, where I covered all the Aaron Rodgers chaos. And that also came with the Ryder Cup and the Milwaukee Bucks championship. So definitely had a good time after the COVID 2020 drama. And then I was in Buffalo for the last 2 years. So I've hopped around the NFL a bit, got to cover some of the Bills, mostly the Sabres for the last year. They were very close, but ultimately fell short of that playoff drought. So it continues for a little longer. And now I'm in Detroit.
So tell me about, CBS Detroit is sort of new. I mean, we all know Sandra Ali. I've known her a long time, and it kind of was the key piece to kind of kick off the news. And she does the mornings at Big 62, as we used to call it. But When are you on, and what are your duties for the station?
Yeah, I'm on as often as I can be for one person, but I'm just trying to cover sports the best I can. And to me, that doesn't mean just scouring highlights everywhere. I'm going to make sure you know the big plays and what happened, but I'm also really into storytelling and doing these types of features that I think will connect viewers with sports on a more human level. So I'm on as often as I can be. Sue me in the summer for just wanting to work a 5-day work week, but in the fall and winter, I'm sure you'll see me 7 days a week in some capacity. But the evening programming, 4, 5, 6, and 11, as we know, is a little more conducive for sports. But I make sure to leave some stuff for our friends like Sandra in the morning, too.
That's awesome. Rachel Hopmayer with us, CBS Detroit, the newest sports anchor and reporter. She's pretty much everywhere joining us here. You mentioned before Buffalo. So have you done one of those table jumps and all of that, like Bill's Mafia? And are you ready for what the Lions tailgate scene is going to be like?
I'm truly excited to explore the Lions tailgate scene. And of course, now the Michigan tailgate scene. Now that alcohol is coming to the big house, I will definitely do a story on that at some point. But I can honestly say I never jumped through a table. I was given permission by my former employer to do so on television if the scene warranted it. But, it was just never the right point. Maybe if they made it past the same stage they found themselves the last few years, it would have been right. But no tables were harmed in my tenure in Buffalo.
All right. So you mentioned you worked for 2 years in Green Bay. The man who introduced us, the guy that told me you've got to get a hold of Rachel, welcome her to town, which we're doing now, is none other than Peter Bukowski, the host of Locked On Packers. I don't know anybody that's friends with him. You're the first. So this is wild. Are you aware of how he's the most hated man in Detroit sports right now?
I knew that re-entering into this crazy division would lead to some chaos because I've got so many friends right across Lake Michigan and a lot of enemies, I'm sure. Yes, I'm aware that Peter likes to stroke the flames every now and then, but you know what? You and I know how great of a person he is behind the Twitter fingers. And you know what? Someone's got to do the entertaining on Twitter. It's not me, but someone has to.
Oh my gosh. So how did you get to be friends with Pete? And so we're letting the cat out of the bag, but he's not this bad of a guy. I mean, he's got a great looking family, wife and kids. He's a regular guy, but how did you become buddies with him?
The most beautiful family. I love them, and I'm definitely crashing their country club at some point. But it was really just through Packers coverage. The Green Bay world is a pretty small world physically and beyond. Of course, Wisconsin and Packers coverage is especially a very niche group. Half of that beat has been there for decades. So sometimes when newcomers like us come in, it's easy to make a reputation for yourself, good or bad. And Pete and I struck it up. I think he valued the stories I was trying to tell. And it just came down to, at the end of the day, he's funny. Whether or not you guys think he's funny in terms of Lions, Packers content, he's a funny guy outside of football.
Who's welcomed you in? Who's mentored you? You've only been here a month, you said, but anybody that's kind of taken you under their wing or been cool to you so far that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, definitely. The women of the Detroit sports scene have been so awesome. I was fortunate enough to be online connected with Danny Rogers and Daniela Bruce previously, because again, sports is a small enough world. The women in sports community is even smaller and even tighter knit. But now that I'm here, I finally got to connect with Gina Trotman and Jen Hammond, and just what wonderful, badass, incredible women they are. And it's just awesome to have that sort of community. We all do different things, tell stories different ways. There's room for all of us at the table. And I love learning from them and just having good chats.
Oh, I love that. That is awesome. All right. More with Rachel Hopmayer coming up next. Her thoughts on the Lions and certainly what we're going to expect in the fall. We talk Lions each and every day here on Locked On Lions. We'll do that with Rachel coming up next. And of course, Locked On Lions today brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Summertime means baseball. Stanley Cup Finals still going on. If somehow, some way you think Edmonton can win 4 straight, put some money down. You can bet on it right now at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 to use to bet on everything from Conn Smythe to who's going to hit one out of the park in any of the MLB games. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. The player props are unbelievable on FanDuel, especially we head into that Game 6 tomorrow night between the Oilers and the Panthers. I think McDavid's going to score 2 goals, whatever it is, you can bet on it all at FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and of course, the proud sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Should we parlay this ad into some hockey talk here?
I love it. What I love about you is that you're immediately just going right into it. We can do that. Are you in that? Is that your thing, hockey? Or because you were just in Buffalo, where come the winter time, they don't have NBA, they don't have baseball. So, like, were you like totally into the Sabres? Or are you a Bees fan?
So I was pretty embedded as a Sabres beat reporter for most of the last 2 years. So spending every day at an NHL rink was the bane of my reporting, or not the bane, the backbone. But, sometimes they can get a little cold. But us New Englanders have iced coffee year round. So it's fine. We're prepared for that sort of stuff. Hockey and football were 1A and 1B for me growing up, especially in New England. I mean, there's pond hockey everywhere. I have Bauer skates. So if anyone's looking for a little twirl, let me know. Come winter, I'm very excited to see what Hockey Town is really all about, of course, outside of Ford Field and beyond. But I'm excited. I think for casual fans, there's been a lot of chatter and assumption of Connor McDavid's greatness and just kind of accepting that. But I think for a lot of lower tier hockey fans, this is a really modern moment just to see how amazing he is at this point in his career. It's been an incredible run.
True story. Many years ago, we had Sean McDonough on the show, and obviously he and I have a Syracuse connection. And he was watching like either Boston U or a BC hockey game when I had to interrupt him. And I'm like, really? It's like Tuesday at 3:30. What do you watch? Oh, Bean Pod or whatever. I'm like, oh.
The Bean Pod. I knew you were going there.
All right, Sean, whatever. So the Boston people and college hockey especially is pretty intense. That is for sure.
It's everything.
Oh, yeah, everything. Lions, how excited are you? You've been down to Allen Park. What are your impressions of what's going on down at 222?
Boy, does it get hot on that field. And Dan Campbell loves a 2-hour practice, which is great. If only I could film that whole thing. That's where we need to evolve these NFL rules next. But I've learned a lot in my quick times and stints at Allen Park so far. Dan Campbell is really refreshing as a coach. Of all the NFL coaches I've covered, he just has this really raw authenticity to him that I really appreciate. You really do stereotypically feel like you're just chatting with a football guy when you get to ask him questions. So I understand the energy there.
From the outside, obviously you were in Boston before that, Green Bay, and certainly spent time in DC or Buffalo, Green Bay, DC, and from Boston. What did you think of Detroit and the Lions? Because it's just now everybody's back on the bandwagon or at least jumping on. But mostly for years, we were kind of considered here, especially the Lions, right? Just a laughing stock in your mind, correct?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, growing up again in New England, I was in such an AFC bubble. I felt like to my football exposures that NFC football was just a different thing for me. I didn't watch these games on Fox. My games were always on CBS or NBC, and that was just my day. We had East Coast football on one TV, NASCAR on another TV every Sunday growing up. It was a very multi-sport household. So the Lions, I was aware of how bad they were, but that was like the equivalent to the Jets for my childhood and our type of situation growing up. So I wrote them off in a sense, and I think that's fair. But it's been awesome to see how they've specifically architected and constructed this comeback and this growth, because it feels very intentional and it feels not overly methodical, but well done, well prepared, and well executed. So it does give me hope that that type of trajectory will continue. But again, as we've seen in Buffalo and some other cities for so long, there sometimes is a ceiling to that.
Rachel Hopmayer with us, CBS Detroit. Great personality. We are seeing and hearing that. So having so much fun talking to her. All right. Do you see, obviously in Green Bay, they thought, please, the Lions, and even Pete's to an extent saying the Packer roster now is just as good and they'll probably overtake them after 1 year. But how do you view the division and how do you think the Lions can get to the Super Bowl this year?
I definitely do think they can, given the way we've been talking to the players and what they've said about their offseason work and how they're feeling going into camp. I don't know that this is the time of year, and specifically I avoid, who's doing what at camp, who's performing here. Like, this is not a comparative time of year. Joint practices, you can finally start to look at some of that stuff. But it's all simulated until it's week 1 at the end of the day. So Yeah, I do think the Lions have just as good of a chance to put on what they did last year and build off of that. Some of the stuff we talked to the guys about in Allen Park was, how do you reflect on San Francisco? Is that haunting you, plaguing you? Are you avoiding it? And they've all said no. In fact, it's very easy to confront that, learn from it, and build. So it seems like a very healthy dynamic going on.
You've covered the Bills. You've been in that locker room. You covered the Packers. You've been in there. I'm not sure you didn't say about the Commanders, but at that point, it was probably Washington football team or who even knows. And trust me, a female in the Redskin locker room back in the day, probably not the most, the best place to be.
It was rare. I was there, in the words of Taylor Swift.
What do you think about the Lions room in terms of just feel? Because like I said, you've been in other NFL locker rooms.
Yeah, good personalities in there for sure, but also very serious about their jobs ahead of them. It is summer. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we could circle back to this, week 4 or 5, the bye week. But it feels good so far, honestly. I understand. I think there's a lot of respect for each other in that room, which doesn't always happen in NFL locker rooms. But there is a lot of respect on all sides of the ball for each other, what everyone is there to do, what the coaches are there to do. Again, it seems very healthy and well balanced, which is not always the case. You guys want to talk about women in sports? We can talk about men in sports in that capacity. But at the end of the day, I like it so far. No red flags to me yet.
That's good. That's good. I like that. It is a great group of guys, and culture is a big deal for the Lions. All right, very important way to wrap this up. She's got the Paramount background, by the way, which we appreciate. All right, what's your go-to spot so far? You've only been here a month. Have you hit downtown yet? Corktown? Is it Royal Oak? Who knows? What's your spot, and what have you enjoyed so far?
Yeah, I am based out of Royal Oak, so super excited to be out there. Always taking recommendations. Never hesitate to tweet me or DM me or any recommendations. Like if I'm going to go do something on the weekend, it's going to be go out to eat on my day off. So make sure I'm eating well around here, please. But I will say last weekend, I finally got to experience Mink. It's in Corktown. Right. And if you like oysters, like I like oysters, which is a lot, I highly recommend. They take the preparation, the shucking, the display of them very seriously. And I had an absolutely fabulous meal there. Wonderful accoutrements, thoughtfully designed tasting menu. It was just one of those culinary experiences that's like, wow, I will never put on anything like that in my life. And I love that I just paid someone to make that for me.
All right, there she is, ladies and gentlemen. Rachel Hopmayer, CBS Detroit. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on, and don't be a stranger.
Thanks for having me.
Rachel Hopmayer, CBS Detroit. Check her out 4, 5, 6, and 11. And she claims that in the fall, she will be working 7 days a week. Those are some Brad Galley hours that she's going to be putting in. So, Rachel, thanks again.
Thanks.
All right, Locked On Lions done for a Thursday edition. We'll be back again on Monday.